Do eat all of the food that you're given. If you don't, that's a way of saying that you didn't really like it, or that you don't appreciate that they gave it to you. I remember, when was it? It was in my first month in the mission. I just had such a hard time eating, because in some meals they would give me more food than I would eat in a day. Like the appetizer would be like a salad, a tomato stuffed with tuna, with lettuce, maybe avocado in English, avocado. And so that's like what I would eat for lunch. And so have the appetizer, I'm like, I'm good, let's go. And my trainer laughed and said, that was the appetizer. No, you are kidding me. And so then they bring out the soup. I'm like, great, a soup. And so I'd eat the soup, that'd be good. They make a lot of bean soups. They're really quite good. And so then I had the soup, like that must have been the main course. We're good. And it's like, so are we done? And my trainer says, not yet. And so they come out with this huge mountainous plate of spaghetti, the main course. And I just look at it and just almost start crying, but it's like, what do I do? And I don't know how I'm going to eat that much food. I eat a soup for dinner some days and a salad for lunch. And here I have this massive plate of spaghetti. And so after we made it through that, they come out and give us a dessert, which is like a fruit or something that I eat for breakfast. And so just so much food, but you should eat it, because if you don't, you are not being very kind to them. And I remember there was this one sister who was notorious for just giving the biggest lunches that the ward had. She just loved the missionaries so much. It was really cool. But we were going to go there on the 12th, and I was freaking out because I knew that I had to eat all of the food, because my trainer had said, you can get away with it now, not eating all the food, but when you go to the house of Hermana Blanca, you're going to have to eat it all. I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to eat all of the food. And so I remember I was praying all morning, just help me to eat all of the food. And we got there, and just huge plates of, there was a soup. In the middle of the table, there was a platter of fruit and 2 bowls of salad that she wanted us to finish. She made us homemade bread. She's like, serve yourself, elders, have fun. And she went into the other room, and we were just eating and eating. And I was like, there's no way I can do it. She came back with the second plate, and somehow we did it. We ate all of the food, and she was so proud of us. She was so flattered and so happy. And it was a really cool experience. God answers prayers, even if they're about food.
My favorite Chilean tradition, and it's not Chilean, it's really all of Latin America, maybe the whole world besides the United States, but I love the kiss. It's the typical greeting in Chile. Elders aren't allowed to do it, which is a major bummer, I think. But sisters, we do it all the time. And it's basically, you don't even really kiss their cheek, but you just go in and your cheek touches their cheek, and it is the perfect greeting. I love it because you'll come back and you'll think that the handshake is just so formal and cold, but the kiss is nice because you don't have to hug every single person, but you're like in close contact. It's really easy to just it's like shaking hands at church. You just go and you kiss everybody, and it's real fun. But sometimes the men try to kiss you, and sometimes they're drunk. And the members usually know. The member men always know not to kiss you, but sometimes it's an awkward situation if you meet a new investigator or a less active's husband, and he comes in for the kiss. And my rule was to just let it happen. It's not a real kiss, it's just a greeting, and sometimes it creates a really awkward situation if you're like, whoa, we cannot kiss. And then just tell them afterwards, but it is just the best. And it is hard not to do it anymore, because it's such a nice way to greet someone, and it's a really big part of their culture.
Well, I mean, they've got a lot of normal table manners. If you're eating, you don't blow your nose up to the table, things like that. But then also, interestingly, you can break most cultural, most etiquette things if you just say permiso first, which means excuse me. They give you whatever for dinner, like chicken for dinner, and you just say permiso, and you can pick it up and eat it with your fingers. And and that's kind of fun. There are a lot of corner churches in Chile or garage churches, I guess you could call them. People just, they'll get tired with their pastor or whatever, and they'll decide to start their own church, or they don't want to walk all the way down the block to that church, so they start one in their garage or whatever. And so there are a lot of, you can't walk down a street without going past, a church literally on every corner, it seems like. And most of them, well, in Chile they're called evangelicos, but they're not like evangelicals in America. They're more like holy rollers, I guess you could call them, that they sing and they shout and they've got their loud music, and it sounds more like some kind of crazy rave or something going on in there than a church meeting. And that's interesting. Actually, one of the girls I taught was actually afraid of the evangelical church behind her, because they're just, they're loud and they'd scream and they'd beat themselves up, and just, it's interesting. I was always curious. I never actually went into one, but I was always curious to see what went on inside. It would be kind of interesting. And they have their Independence Day, which is the 18th of September. And that's really cool. It's, depending on where it falls in the week, it's anywhere between 3 days and 9 days of partying. And they'll take as many days off as they possibly can. And they'll hang out with family, they'll get drunk. They cook huge barbecue meals. You'll have 5 different kinds of meat cooked in different ways, and potatoes and French fries and empanadas and just all this food. And then they'll get together in the plaza, so the town square, and they'll do their traditional Chilean dance, which is called the cueca. And it's just always a lot of fun, a lot of partying. Pain in the half if you're a missionary, because you don't get hardly any work done. But it's really cool. It's fun to watch.
The holidays are fun. They love their holidays. It's the 18 de septiembre, which is the 18th of September. And it is their Independence Day, and they just throw a huge party for a week. And so it's so fun, because you'll have asados, you'll have these barbecues, you'll be in the street talking with the people, and when they see you, they see these missionaries, and they just invite you in. And because it's the 18th of September, it's Independence Day. And so kind of everything shuts down, but it's so fun. They have their national dance, La Cueca, which they love, which is fun to see. They eat a lot of meat that day, that whole week. A cultural thing is their soda. They love soda. You will be contacting, and you'll kind of you go alo, so alo, and they come out, and you'll ask sometimes for a drink of water, a glass of water, because it's so hot and you just want a glass of water. And they're really nice and they do it, but they come out with this glass of soda, and you're just dying for water, but they come out with soda. And so Coca-Cola is their drink. They love Coca-Cola and bread. So for every meal, I swear, it's Coca-Cola and bread, which is just a Chilean thing. They have what's called once, which I love once. And so they do it at I'd say 9 or 10 at night. When they get home from work, they all get together and they have once. And it's kind of like a tea party. They have their bread with their cheese and their ham. They have soda. People drink their tea. And it's just a time it's like a tea time. And so I loved onces. The people were really nice about giving us onces. And it's just a good way to connect with them. Just sit down and have once with them. So yeah, that was a cultural thing that I loved, and I actually miss it, and I want to start it back up here. So
Well, like I said, it was hard to get them to church on Sunday because they work so hard during the week. A lot of them, especially in the smaller cities that were in the northern part of my mission, they were miners, so they'd fly out for 15 days to their mining sites, and then they'd come home for 5 days or like 2 weeks to 1 week or some sort of ratio like that. But a lot of them were miners, especially in the smaller town. Their Independence Day is 18th of September, and the whole week is just a huge party. The non-Mormons get pretty drunk. The Mormons, like at the church, there's always a huge party. They have tons of like little games and stuff they play. They speak Spanish very fast. Like when I came home, I was speaking English super fast because I was used to talking fast. In Chile they say po after everything. So instead of pues like most Spanish countries, they say po. That's kind of their Chilean thing, and they cut their S's a lot. So that's kind of their little language thing. They don't have like an accent, or like in Argentina or Mexico, it's kind of up and down. In Chile, it's just flat pretty much. But they talk very fast. Like I could understand everything. Chileans were the last people I could understand Spanish-wise, which is unfortunate because they were the people I needed to understand. They're all very nice. Like obviously there were the people who wouldn't let us in. Just you're gonna get upset people in where you go, but a ton of people would let us in, and as soon as they'd let us in, they'd give us all sorts of food. Like we'd either eat nothing during the day and be starving, or we'd eat like way too much, just because everybody we met would give us food. And they'd always be most people like who actually would they'd talk to us at the door, and they'd be interested. They're always very polite. Like on the days where it'd just be raining super hard, me and my companion would be out there for 4 hours, and there were obviously some people who weren't as nice, but my memory and like what I remember is there were a ton of people who were super polite, and they'd offer to let us come in even if they weren't interested, just because there were two white people in the rain, and so they were super nice about us. The members took great care of us. Members always did my laundry. They always cooked us food. They always wanted to be around the missionaries. Yeah, they love the missionaries down there, so you're in for a treat if you get called to Chile, just because the members love the missionaries so much. They're grateful for them, so they're well taken care of for sure.
I loved learning about the Chilean culture. Even as an outsider, even as somebody who came from so far away, who was, in a lot of ways very different from them, I felt so accepted. I felt like everybody was kind. I mean, not everyone, that's not right, but most everyone was very kind. And everyone I met, at least gave me a hello if I gave them one, which is, it was great. The culture is a lot different from the United States. In the United States, we have a culture of go, 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 go. I'm going to eat lunch at my desk because I don't have any time. I have to do my homework. I have to be at work. And I have to do these millions of things. And I'm going to work until 8 p.m. And, and it's very go, go, go and crazy. But the Chilean culture is a lot more relaxed. Usually people wake up later. They take almuerzo, which is lunch, but it's a big meal. And usually they get like an hour or two off of work, so they can go home and spend that time with their family, take a nap, and then they go back to work, and everything closes, not too late. Nothing's open past like 9 p.m., It's very calm. And I think that happens when you're in a more rural place. People were, and this obviously depended on the person, but people were very generous. Everybody was willing to give you food. Everyone was willing to let you at least stand by their fire for a little bit if you were cold. The members especially love you to death, especially if you serve them and you love them and you help them. And if you're an obedient missionary, the members love you. And your mamita, the person who serves you lunch every day, they will become like your mom, like your mission mom. And so Chile is a great place. I think something important to remember about going to a different country is that it's different. And that sounds kind of silly because it sounds like, well, obviously. But we do have to remember that the people in a different country have grown up with different ideals. They've grown up with different a different history and with different priorities, and to be careful about the things that you say. And you'll hear a lot of things that are like, oh, ouch, that I'm not like that. Like, you'll hear a lot of people be like, oh, well, all Americans are fat, or all Americans are rich and greedy. And you'll hear things like that and it'll hurt you. And just, be careful about the things you say as well. Chile as a country has a very different history than the United States. They've gone through a couple of hard things, trying to figure out who they are. And so sometimes you'll get people who are angry at you because you're an American. And that happens only every once in a while. It's not a lot, but every once in a while you will get that. And, you want to maybe be defensive, but you just have to remember that they grew up with different ideals and they grew up with different history lessons. The interesting thing about Chile, though, is its mix of cultures, because you have a lot of people that are from white descent, like German or Spanish, and they're very light-skinned. And then you have a lot of people from an Indigenous descent as well. And sometimes there's like a clash between the two, but genuinely loved everyone I met. There was honestly nothing that, there was no stereotype about those groups that I found to be true. But sometimes you'll hear them complain about each other. So the Indigenous group of Chileans, they speak a language called Mapuche. And if you find someone who speaks it, it's a really cool language. And they lived in the country for a long time before people came and took over, and before the Germans came. And so sometimes you'll find somebody who knows a lot about the history, and it's so interesting. I knew somebody who knew a lot about Easter Island, who actually was a descendant of the tribe that lived on Easter Island and who started it. And so we asked her all sorts of interesting questions, and it was so fascinating. And learning about that culture on my mission and as I got back was so interesting. There's an urban legend that takes place on the island of Chiloé. And in Chiloé, they say it rains from the floor, like it rains from the ground, because it's so windy and so rainy, it feels like the rain is just like coming from below and coming up towards you. But it's an urban legend about an old ghost ship that will come to harbor, and it's bad luck to see it. And you'll hear some people talk about it sometimes or joke about it, like, oh, where did that person go? Oh, they got taken by the ghost ship. And it's very interesting. So you do see some different cultures. So to say Chilean culture is kind of weird, because there are very different subsets of it. One of my favorite things to study when I got back from my mission, and one thing that you don't have the ability to study on your mission, but is still beautiful, is the literature of Chile. You have wonderful artists who paint beautiful pictures, and just beautiful and wonderful. You have Pablo Neruda, you have Isabel Allende, you have so many artists who come from Chile who just have done beautiful things with words and with picture.
It was serious culture shock when I got there, like way more than I expected, because it's really interesting how everybody, when they hear you're going to Chile, says, oh, that's the most like America. Like, that's the most like the United States in South America. It's kind of one of the more developed, advanced countries, so they have a lot of things that are imported from the U.S. And as far as South America goes, it's the most similar. But it's not the same. Like, I was expecting it to be really similar, but it's really different. And I love it, obviously, but it was it was a shock at first. And my first morning, I also didn't expect it to be cold. So if you're getting there in winter, you have to make sure that you're prepared for it to actually be cold. I'm like, oh, it won't be nearly as cold as Utah. I'll be fine. No, I was freezing. So I got there, I was freezing. I thought my Spanish was okay. Wasn't that good. I didn't understand anything. And it didn't take too long to get used to it because the people are great, and my companion was really helpful and everything. But yeah, you should prepare yourself for it to be really different. And then the people they're really giving, they're really nice, but they kind of express that more through their actions and their words. But it's kind of like they also can be very stern with you. They'll a lot of times the moms will be like, you better put on a coat because you're gonna get cold. And then they're like, oh, take some bread, I love you so much. You're just like, are you scolding me or are you loving me? I don't know. But they're just really fun that way. And they really express their love for you by giving you food. So it's really important to accept those gifts that they give you and express how much you love the food that they give you. If you gain a little weight, which definitely happened to me, it's okay, you can lose it later. But they definitely love to give you food, especially the missionaries. They think that the missionaries, because they walk all day, need to eat 3 times as many calories as a normal person. But that's how they show their love for you. And it's really important to accept that. And I always felt really loved. I felt cared about by the people, even if they didn't always have time to go with us to lessons or that sort of thing. The members really cared about us, and I really appreciated that. And their culture is also very they'll be very blunt about some things, and then other things they won't. And this depends on the person, obviously, too. But most people will, if you ask oh, can we meet with you? Can we go see you? They'll say, oh, sure, of course, come by anytime. But then you try to set a time and they're like, I don't want to commit. So that's really interesting. You have to be very flexible. If you're trying to run a set schedule, okay, we're gonna have this lesson at this time, this lesson at this time, this lesson at this time, it's probably not gonna work out that way. So you have to just be willing to be very flexible, and you have to be willing to just change plans constantly. I never had a day where I was like, wow, we actually followed our plans. No. So just because the people are very casual that way, and they don't worry too. Some people are exceptions, obviously, but kind of the culture is not to worry too much about the time and just kind of go with the flow. And so you kind of have to learn to do that as a missionary as well. Even though you have your goals and you have your schedule, you kind of got to go with the flow with people, and you'll be a lot more successful for sure.
They're all so nice. I don't know. They're always so super willing to let you come in. That's kind of a problem, though, because when you're trying to find people who are actually interested and people just want you to come and talk to them, then that can run into an issue. They love talking. Oh my gosh, so much. At the beginning of my mission, I fell asleep in several lessons because the Chileans were just talking, telling this super long story, and I didn't understand any of it. And then my companion had to wake me up. So that was embarrassing, but it's okay. Yes, they're very talkative. They feed you a lot, just like in all of South America, but yep, get ready to always be ready to eat. My companion told me stories, especially in the poorer areas, where they would make her bread and she would have had 10 meals already at this point, and she didn't want it, but she had to eat it because they would be offended and be like, but Hermana, we made this for you. And so she's like, oh, thank you. One time I was really full and I didn't want the rest of my lasagna. And I asked if I could take it home, and the lady got super offended, and it was awful. So I learned to eat a lot, and I gained some weight, but it was okay. I lost it near the end. Yeah, they just really like to feed you, and they like talking, and they're super nice, and they're almost always willing to let you come by their house. So that's cool. So a lot of them are Catholics, and they all say that they're Catholics in their own way. So most of them don't really go to church because they don't feel like it, but they believe in God and the Holy Ghost, Mary. It's not hard to teach them because they do have that background in God. So just as long as they're willing to find out about the truth. But other than that, yeah, I wouldn't say they're lazy, but who wants to wake up early and go to church on Sunday if they don't really care that much, you know? So I think that's the hardest part, is getting them to go to church. I mean, just have manners and be nice, be friendly, smile. I don't know. It's not that different from America in that aspect of the cultural do's and don'ts.
Chileans are just very friendly in general. They are very generous with their food. They're very generous with most things, actually. We never had anywhere where we were just going hungry. We would eat lunch with the members every day. But they would always just give us so much food. Sometimes we just wanted to burst. But we'd eat it all because they know how to cook. Like, it's delicious. There are some dishes that, you know, they'll just marinate with mayonnaise or something like that. But most of their cooking is very good. So, yeah, the Chilean culture is just very, very warm, very loving. They're very affectionate people. It was common to see families that would, like, cuddle with each other on the couch while we were talking to them. They would, like, there's one family in particular that I remember, because the son, well, we would teach the family, he would be sitting next to his dad with his arm around his head, and he would be playing with his ear the entire time. And, like, my companion and I would always giggle about it, but we're like, okay, whatever, at least he's listening. And I remember that family especially because the dad was really hesitant to listen to the lessons. The rest of his family was just gung-ho about it. They loved reading the Book of Mormon with us. And they came to church faithfully, and he would come to church occasionally with us. And then one day there was just this shift in his being. Like, we came over and we just knew there was something different. And we talked, we gave him a lesson. I actually have no idea what that lesson was that night. But when we invited him to come to church that Sunday, he's like, yeah, Elder, I'll be there. And it was a really enthusiastic, I'll be there. And we were like, wow, something has changed about you. And then the next couple of weeks, like, it just went so smoothly. And we were talking with him one night about it, and he's just like, I don't know, I felt something different one day. I don't know what it was. Like, after you left one night and then came back the next day, I just felt like I needed to do something different. And so that's why the next couple of weeks went so smoothly, and then he got baptized soon after that. And it was a great experience because his brother-in-law was able to baptize him. His brother-in-law was the branch president. And it was just such a loving baptism. They were all there, and everybody was just giving hugs all around. And that's just one example of, like, how affectionate Chilean people are. It's just hugs all the time. And just so much love. And families usually stay together, like, I can't say this is normal for Americans, but what I hear about a lot is Americans, you know, will move away from home and we'll start our own family. But the majority of Chileans will stay with their family and raise their kids with their grandparents. And they'll either live in the same house or a house, like, right next door. And they just stay together. It's so awesome to see, because then we'll just get these big families, and there's just so much love that goes around. And so sometimes it made it really easy to talk to families about being sealed eternally, which was something that was really appealing to most mothers, and that was usually what caught the attention of fathers as well. There are some fathers that would get on our case about about teaching the Restoration. We would talk to them about the Book of Mormon, about Joseph Smith being a prophet. And then as soon as we talked about how the priesthood being restored will help them be an eternal family, their demeanor would just change. They'd be like, wait, what? I can be with my family forever? Okay, like, this isn't so bad. And, you know, before they got baptized, we would usually knock heads again about, like, the Restoration. We would challenge them to pray about it. But it was that fact of families can be eternal that usually, like, stayed in their minds, just weighed on them to make it, and persuaded them to accept our invitations to read and to pray and to come to church. That's the Chilean culture, is just very family oriented. Unfortunately, this will sound very racist or stereotypical of me. Chileans have a tendency to be lazy. The fact that church started at 10 a.m., we heard a lot like, oh, 10 a.m., that's so early. And we would just look at them and be like, do you not get up on Sundays? Do you just sleep all day? So it was kind of hard for people to accept our invitations to do things. The phrase we heard most often was, si Dios quiere, if God willing. And it was a joke among the missionaries. We would just be like, God is willing. God wants this. Don't worry. And we would tell people that sometimes. Like, no, elders, that's just a phrase. And we're like, we know it's a phrase. God wants this. I promise you. And so it was hard to get people to read the Book of Mormon, which was really frustrating for me because that was a good portion of the reason I was out serving a mission. I would tell people about the Book of Mormon, and they'd be like, oh, okay, this sounds cool. And then they wouldn't read. We would come back the next day and be like, so what'd you think of the chapter we told you to read? And he'd be like, oh, well, elders, I didn't read it. And I would just be like, dude, come on. Like, we'll read it with you. And so we would read it with them, and sometimes they would like really get into it, and other times they would just be like, oh, this is a good book, it's great, cool, and wouldn't do anything with it. But like I said, that was one of the harder aspects of Chilean culture, is that they tend to be more lazy than most Americans. So, but like I said, they're very loving, and it's great to work with them.
I love Chile. The people are so wonderful. It's so easy to just go up and, well, it might not be easy, but if you just start talking to someone, they will love to listen from you. They'll love to listen to you. They want to talk about their lives, and so if you can just get up and start talking, they will happily talk to you for hours. But they're great. Chile, the people there are so wonderful. They love to cook, and that's kind of a way that they show their love to you, is by giving you food. So a lot of times they'll feed you a lot. They'll let you try new things. They'll ask you about your culture. And so they're very loving people. They're not very cold. Of course, you'll have some of both. You'll have cold people, but for the most part, they're very loving and very open. They love soccer. They love to talk about it. And if you play soccer, they'll love you forever. And yes, the Chileans, they love their bread. They eat bread 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and once. And they love to put avocado and everything on it. And they love to give you food as showing them their love for you. So sometimes you just gotta keep eating. But so for lunches, they would give us a big plate because that's their main dish. And so they would eat, a lot of times they eat what's called porotos, which are just beans. And those are really good too. They eat like soups a lot of times during the winter. They always have soup. They eat their classic salad. The Chilean salad is just onions and tomatoes, and the dressing they put on it is oil and salt. And just put that together, and that's their Chilean salad. And they also eat what's called cazuela, which is like soup with meat and corn and squash, just kind of all together. They also have what's called once, and they eat that. It's like their dinner, but it's small because their lunch was big. They eat that about 6 or 7 or 8 in the evening. And usually what they do is they just have like their tea and coffee or their like herbal infusions, I think they're called. And they eat it with bread, and then they have avocado or tomato and stuff, and they put it on there. Sometimes they eat completos, and this is the stuff you can buy on the street, like where you'd see fast food or things on with street vendors. They have completos, which are like hot dogs, but they have guacamole. Well, they have avocado and tomatoes and onions and a ton of mayo, and they just eat it. It's huge. And then you can also buy sopaipillas, which are like little scone type things that are kind of made from squash. It's just fun, especially with, I think for me, public transportation was fun. When you're on the buses, you can just start talking to people, and they just love to talk, and they're really like, they want to be your friend. I don't know if that's how they are with everybody. With Americans, they just want to be your friend, and so that was fun. Like, that's something that I'll miss for sure. And the people that are they're so loving. It's so fun to talk to them still and like hear about their lives. They just really just care a lot, which is really fun, which is the best part for me. That's what I miss most. I like in Chile that you can just kind of walk out and buy whatever you need right on the street. Everyone does a lot of things with their hands. So everyone knows how to crochet, everybody knows how to make like cool jewelry and stuff. So everybody's really, really crafty, and so that's how they can provide for their families when they don't have maybe a stable job. They can start selling things, or they can start like doing things for service, because they know how to do a lot of things like manually, which is really impressive.